Imagine walking into one of the richest cities in the world with so much gold that its value begins to fall. Now imagine that this happened nearly 700 years ago. No private jet, no skyscrapers, no stock market empire, just one ruler, an enormous caravan, and an almost unimaginable amount of gold. His name was Mansa Musa, the 14th century ruler of the Mali Empire. Today, he is widely considered one of the wealthiest people in history. But there is a problem with that claim. We don't actually know how rich he was. And the real story is even more fascinating than the number. Mansa Musa ruled Mali during the early 14th century, when the empire was one of the most powerful states in West Africa. His kingdom stretched across huge parts of the Sahel and controlled important trade routes connecting West Africa with North Africa and the wider Islamic world. Mali's power was closely connected to its control over gold-producing regions and the trade of valuable goods such as salt. But Musa's reputation exploded far beyond Africa because of one journey. In 1324, he left Mali on a pilgrimage to Mecca, and what happened along the way would turn him into a legend. Musa did not travel like an ordinary pilgrim. According to historical accounts, his caravan was enormous. One widely repeated account describes tens of thousands of people accompanying him along with hundreds of camel loads of gold. The exact numbers are uncertain, but the scale of the journey was clearly extraordinary. Then came Cairo. At the time, Cairo was one of the great cities of the medieval world, and suddenly an African emperor arrived carrying vast quantities of gold. Musa gave gold to officials. He gave gold to the poor. He spent heavily on gifts and purchases. And according to the accounts collected by the Egyptian historian Al-Umari, his generosity affected the local value of gold. Think about what that means. Today, if one billionaire suddenly dumped an enormous amount of a commodity into a major market, prices could move. Musa's spending was apparently large enough to become a subject of historical record. But this is where the story often gets exaggerated. You may have heard that Mansa Musa single-handedly destroyed Egypt's economy for years. The evidence is more complicated. Historical sources do report a decline in the value of gold after Musa's visit, but historians disagree about how dramatic its economic impact really was. Some popular accounts turn this into a massive economic collapse, while specialists caution that the evidence does not support such a simple story. So if the famous numbers are uncertain, why was Musa so wealthy in the first place? The answer begins with geography. West Africa possessed enormous gold resources. Mali sat at the center of an incredibly important network connecting gold-producing areas south of the Sahara with North African markets. Gold moved north, salt moved south, and merchants crossed the Sahara carrying both wealth and information. Musa controlled much of this system. He was not simply a man sitting on a pile of gold. He was the ruler of a powerful state whose wealth came from controlling territory, resources, trade routes, taxation, and commerce. And that distinction matters, because when people today ask, how much was Mansa Musa worth? They are asking a modern question about a medieval ruler. His wealth was not sitting inside a bank account. Much of what we call his wealth was connected to the resources and economic power of the state he controlled. Then something unexpected happened. Musa became famous far beyond the borders of Mali. His journey to Mecca connected him with powerful rulers, scholars, merchants, and chroniclers across the Islamic world. And his reputation traveled even farther. A famous 14th century map, the Catalan Atlas, later depicted Musa holding a gold object, visually presenting him as an extraordinarily wealthy ruler. But there was another reason his wealth became legendary. Musa understood the power of image. He wasn't merely displaying gold. He was displaying the power of Mali. His pilgrimage announced to the wider world that an enormously wealthy and sophisticated African empire existed south of the Sahara, and the consequences went beyond luxury. Musa supported architecture, scholarship, and Islamic institutions. Under Mali's rulers, cities such as Timbuktu became important centers of trade and learning. So the most interesting part of Musa's story isn't actually how many billions of dollars he might have had. It is that we cannot accurately convert his wealth into a modern number. Some modern articles attach enormous figures to his fortune, sometimes claiming hundreds of billions of dollars. But historians caution, that comparisons between a 14th century emperor and modern billionaires are fundamentally difficult. We don't have reliable records of Musa's personal assets, and separating the ruler's personal wealth from the wealth of the state is nearly impossible. So was Mansa Musa really the richest person who ever lived? The honest answer is, we don't know. But we do know something remarkable. He was wealthy enough, powerful enough, and historically visible enough that centuries later, his name remains almost synonymous with extreme wealth, and that's why his story matters. Today we measure billionaires through companies, shares, property, investments, and financial markets. Musa lived in a completely different economic world. His power came from land, trade, resources, people, political authority, and control over one of the world's most valuable commodities. Trying to give him an exact modern net worth can create a misleading sense of precision. But there is no doubt that Mansa Musa stood at the peak of one of medieval Africa's greatest empires. For centuries, people have searched for the richest person who ever lived. Maybe they expected to find a modern billionaire. Instead, they found an emperor from medieval West Africa, a ruler whose pilgrimage became legendary, a ruler whose gold became a symbol of unimaginable wealth, and a ruler whose true fortune may never be possible to calculate. Because perhaps the most revealing fact about Mansa Musa isn't that he was worth hundreds of billions. It's that 7 centuries later, we are still trying to figure out just how rich he really was.